Well, here we are once again adding potential creatures to the wide expanse of creative entries featured on SCP Wiki. Of course, to add pre-existing IPs to a world so heavily focused on community contribution would be a bit of a smack in the face, so we'll just work in the realm of hypotheticals for now. Who knows? Maybe a monster we mention will inspire someone to make something similar, yet still wholly original and fascinating. The world of a writer is never done, and new ideas can come from anywhere. So let's talk monsters. Hello horror heads, and welcome back to the scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. I'm your horror host, Keegan Hughes, and today we're going to be discussing the top 5 scary monsters that should be SCPs Part 2. Before we get going, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more pre-made monster madness. Perfect, let's begin. Coming in at number 5, we got Miss Anna Dee. If you're a horror enthusiast who also uses YouTube, you've probably heard of Crypt TV. This is a channel that exhibits all sorts of scary stories from around the world featuring monsters, magic, and more. Relatively recently, they decided to envelop all of their scariest beasts into a monster universe, not unlike many of the other cinematic universes out there. In doing so, folks were able to draw all sorts of lines between tales, whether going through recurring themes, characters, or glowing purple fragments. Some monsters had enough potential to spawn multiple episodes to call their very own, filling in blanks and elaborating on some ludicrous lore. Miss Anna Dee is one such monster. This old-fashioned etiquette instructor always appears with a lesson ready to go. She shows up in the lives of people who feel like they don't fit in and are often willing to change something about themselves to do so. In the SCP-verse, she might be considered some flavor of cognito-hazardous. Miss Anna Dee might detect the self-loathing or willingness to alter oneself and appear nearby. If you've taken in a few of the episodes featuring her antics, you'll know what happens next. While initially looking like a prim and proper lady, with time, Anna Dee will become more spider-like. She sprouts 8 terrible legs and gains a plethora of big beady eyes. In teaching her old-fashioned lessons while appearing this way, she gets quite forceful. She might cut strips of flesh away from somebody who wishes they were skinnier, or inject a businessman with deadly venom before forcing his body to work like a marionette. Maybe there's even a little bit of reality bending going on. There are lessons to be learned here, but the Foundation isn't worried about that. They're more concerned with figuring out how she seems to break the laws of physics by teleporting about and disemboweling folks. Coming in at number 4, we got Kaimon. Okay, now hear me out. This gigantic lizard from Dorohedoro would need a bit of retconning to truly fit in as an SCP, but once that change is made, it's the perfect match. See, in Kaimon's homeworld, there are a few different types of folk. There are regular humans, and then there are sorcerers. Sorcerers love to practice their skills on hapless humans living in the slum world known as the Hole. Kaimon was one of those helpless beings and was given a giant lizard head with a secret hidden within. He goes around biting people on the head, which causes them to see a man inside his mouth. This man then evaluates whether or not that person is the sorcerer who caused the head change. If it's not the right person, Kaimon will then kill them. I won't go too much further into the world of Dorohedoro because to do so would just confuse the argument I'm about to make. But if Kaimon was brought into the universe in which the Foundation exists, he would definitely have a slightly different story. All of his attributes would be the same for sure. Limited memory, big lizard head, man living in his mouth, the whole 9 yards. But instead of a mystery sorcerer in a world full of sorcerers being the cause of the transformation, it would instead be Dr. Wondertainment. He could be a little mister. It makes sense, right? Dr. Wondertainment found this large man and decided to make him Mr. Crocodile. In terms of the toy meant for kids aspect, it's not a far stretch to make. He could be a game along the lines of Crocodile Dentist. Come here, kids, see what happens when you stick your head in this croc's mouth. Be careful, he bites. It's equal parts hilarious and totally dangerous, just like most Wondertainment products. And like other little misters, Kaimon would wander around largely aimlessly. But if anyone like Mr. Red ever put him on the right track, you know this combat knife-toting beast man would hunt down the good doctor to the ends of the earth. Coming in at number 3, we got the Silence. Another day, another cognito hazard. Maybe even an anti-meme, depending on how far you take it. The Foundation is no stranger to religious organizations. We've got the Sarkics, the Church of the Broken God, Abel and Cain, the weirdos who worship 2662, and more. So adding the Silence from the Doctor Who universe would be no big deal. They're definitely anomalous and definitely super cool. They fit right in. The main goal of the Silence is to prevent a prophecy, and I would wager that the Foundation wouldn't care too much about that. The good old Foundation folks would be spending most of their time just trying to remember that the Silence exists. See, many of the members of this order belong to a race of genetically altered priests. These thought leaders can use post-hypnotic suggestion to manipulate others into doing their bidding, among other things. So as these freaky alien-looking creatures make their way across the world, the Foundation would be at their heels, trying to keep the reins on. However, these Silence have a defensive trick up their sleeve. All memories of them will be erased once an individual looks away. So doctors and researchers and whatnot could do their very best to catalog and contain and protect any instances they secure, but it would all be for naught. As soon as someone looks away, the thoughts are gone. Head empty. The notes may remain, but how can one stay on task when you forget what you're working on every time you look away? Tales and other assorted documents could allude to their existence as well, including their supposed involvement with major historic events like the moon landing. But to totally hone in on and lock down details would be nigh impossible. Coming in at number 2, we've got Jumanji. We're gonna have to be a little flexible with our definition of monster for this one, but it is totally worth it. Imagine this, an anomalous board game that can affect the world around it. One that could potentially trap people inside it indefinitely. One containing a quasi-immortal humanoid with strange aspirations. Oh, it'd be so cool. We all know the story of Jumanji at this point, the supernatural game that releases jungle hazards on anyone who plays. Now, think about the discovery log for something like that. A Foundation MTF gets called to an old house where some gigantic mosquitoes were spotted, like football-sized bugs absolutely draining innocent passersby. At first they think it's just the bugs, but then they notice that the jungle around the house is expanding too, and then a lion runs through. This causes the good folks to tighten up their Foundation issue boots and get a closer look. Maybe they meet a fleeing player after a bad roll, or maybe they come face to face with Van Pelt himself. Either way, it becomes clear that something is changing the world in that area, and it's not just a bunch of big bugs. Once contained, the experimentation would be fun too. Slowly, Foundation researchers would discover that a bunch of people have been trapped inside. The win conditions would become apparent too. Once all is said and done, they would have to deal with the implications of everything reversing once the game is won. Technically, Jumanji is a reality-altering time-traveling device. Folks who have been stuck for years and whose families have moved on will be sent back in time, altering the timelines ahead. Would that mean that any Foundation interaction with the game would also be undone? Well, I suppose there's only one way to find out. Plus, Jumanji will always be anomalously beating invisible drums, luring new people in. And finally, at number 1, we've got Necromorphs. We gave the Flood the number 1 position last time, so let's take a look at some more world-ending flesh monsters. The Necromorphs are mutated, reanimated corpses that have been disfigured and reshaped into terrifying forms. They attack any and all non-necromorphs on sight. I'm already drawing comparisons to the flesh that hates. It seems that their only purpose is to find more bodies and spread the infection further. The ultimate goal is to create a brethren moon, or a massive necromorph consisting of every organism in an ecosystem. Sheesh. Some say they are the heralds of humanity's ascension, which again feels very sarkic to me. You know, reducing everything to flesh in order to spread and thrive. It all starts with the markers, which blast electromagnetic signals meant to alter the biology of organisms. Once this happens, the altered beings are free to spread the infection. An interesting note about the spread is that the infection will only transform an organism if it is dead. If a living being is infected, they will be negatively impacted, but not transformed. However, this negative impact does make them easy targets. The transformation itself is quick and violent and generates plenty of heat. Bones snap and recombine, blood boils and bursts through skin, vital organs are all turned into musculature to enhance strength. It's very grotesque. I can't imagine humanity lasting very long once the necromorphs start infecting folks, so I propose that the SCP is actually the marker causing the initial infection. Maybe a Foundation scientist manages to pinpoint the electromagnetic wave that leads to the annihilation of a different planet. It could be one of those far-off threats that we can't do much about, a terrifying world-ending threat that just hasn't noticed us yet. Or maybe it has and it's on the way. Well, thankfully, none of those monsters are real, as far as we know. I suppose I wouldn't mind a Crypt TV monster or two running around, more population control and public education than anything. But the world-ending threats, let's avoid those for now. What kinds of monsters do you think would fit in well with the Foundation? Do you have a personal headcanon for your favorite creature being discovered by an MTF? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more horrific ones from the top 5 scary invisible friends that children have. Just some Bigfoot with internet access says, what if you are actually your invisible friend's invisible friend? Please don't make me question my own existence. I've got enough going on. Ed Savant says, it's even scarier if you caught a glimpse of them from time to time. Well, then they're not invisible, are they? Just partially visible. Mr. Taz says, I had an imaginary friend growing up. Looking back, having a floating electric skull as a childhood imaginary friend is probably a big reason my parents worried about me growing up after I'd show them all my drawings of him. That is a wicked companion. To this day, I wish I could have a floating electric skull to hang out with. And Chaw5 says, Hobbs the Tiger from Bill Watterson's comic strip Calvin and Hobbes, which features a young boy and his imaginary friend. A toy tiger comes to life that only he can see, and all the wonders and humor and horror of childhood. As much as I love and cherish Calvin and Hobbes, I can't quite say the tiger is ever invisible. And that's all the time we have for today. Before I mix up my cooking oil and sunscreen, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more miscellaneous monsters. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.